In this video, we're going to take a look at mobile app development considerations. What kind of things do you want to think about when you start to design a mobile app? So first of all, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? You might want to think of maybe a vision or a mission, or a use case, or even better, consider what your app store directory is going to look like. So if you go to the Google Play Store, and in this video, as with most videos, I'm going to use my own application as an example, Plant Places. So if we go to the Google Play Store, and I'll go to, we'll go like this, how about this? And then I search for Plant Places. Okay. Okay, so if we take a look here, what kind of description do we want to have when we think about the challenge that our app is solving, or the purpose of our app? Think about the description. Think about the words that we're going to put in a Play Store description, because these will be important. This is what's going to drive users to our site. What's going to make our app unique? What's going to make it different from other apps that are out there? What problem is it solving? You probably want to think about your Play Store description when you first start your app. What are the screen captures going to look like? What kind of keywords you're going to have? That might be a good way to start guiding your app. Second, data. Where will you find your data? Can you add value by combining data? One of the things that we'll do with mobile apps is take data and make information out of it. Okay, so data is just stuff. Information is what we do with that stuff. Information is making intelligent decisions based on that data. So, where can we get data? Can we get data from the phone? Can we get data from the accelerometer that tells us how fast we're going? Can we get data from the GPS? Can we get data from the camera? Okay, now when we have data from the phone, we can combine it with data from external sources as well, things like web services. Okay, so can we combine data from our phone, maybe the contact list with the user's permission, of course, the GPS, the camera? Can we combine that with external data, and can we do it well? Next, storyboard our app. Storyboard is a good idea because just like we would do with a play or some kind of commercial or some kind of video, we want to say what's going on from scene to scene to scene. Okay, and that's where a storyboard is helpful. When I first created my app, I found that I eventually threw a lot of stuff away that I'd written because I had not written a proper storyboard. Okay, so we want to think about this process of storyboarding our app. So we'll take a look at that. First, I'm going to rewind back a little bit and take a look at data before we jump into a storyboard example. And again, I'll show my app. We not only want to make a good use of data, but we also want it to be user-friendly. So if we take a look at the Plant Places mobile app, first of all, a design consideration. One thing that Android recommends is that you don't have a splash screen and you don't start with a menu. Okay, user experience is interesting because a lot of developers think they're good at user experience because they are developers, but that might not be the case. A lot of times developers are actually very bad at user experience, and you really need to pull in a user experience expert to make something very usable. And that's something I found in my own app. I wrote my app and then I taught this class, Intro to Mobile, and we look at some user experience things in this class. And I realized that I had some significant user experience issues. Number one, this main screen. This is the screen that you come to when you go to Plant Places Mobile, and it's overwhelming. There are too many words on it. Okay, there are too many buttons. Things like change your preference, that should not be on the very first screen. As a matter of fact, one of the things that Android recommends is that we don't even have a menu screen. We pick the option that most users are going to use about 80% of the time, and we take them directly to that screen, and we allow them to access other screens as a menu, okay? As a menu from the first screen that they come into. So, Plant Places Mobile, what can you do with it? Search plants by color. That is the first item, And that is probably one of the most important because it's what sets our app apart from other apps. You can take a picture or you can use an existing photo and then you can select plants that have that color. It can also show plants near you. It can also GPS a plant. It can show you the plants that you have GPSed. You can enter plants for sale and several other things. So you see there are a lot of things this app does, probably too many things. But most people want the search by color. So from a usability standpoint, I probably shouldn't have this first menu. I should take the user directly in the search by color. Also, most of the time, the user is going to want to search by color using the phone's camera, not necessarily using a gallery. So I should probably also take them right to the Take New Photo page. So now here is something else interesting from a usability standpoint. I looked back on a video I made about a year ago for this very same course. And I just watched the video again so I could write down a few notes and I could remember to say them in this video that I'm recording right now. And when I looked, I saw some things that kind of scared me. Because this is the original video I have in this little YouTube capture. Originally, this is what you saw when you clicked the button that says Open Existing Image. Okay, now what's the problem? What it's doing is it's showing you a list of files. But remember, we're selecting images. Okay, file names do nothing for us. What we really want to see is an image. So that was a big usability issue in my app that I changed. Now if you click Open Existing Image, look at the difference. Okay, look at the difference. See, it actually shows pictures, where before it just showed a list of file names. So a big usability error that's since been fixed. Okay, so I'm going to click on this first picture. And what it's going to do, and this is the emulator, which means I can show my app on a computer. The emulator does have a couple quirks. It's a little tricky to try to, oops, I went a little too far there. It's a little tricky to try to pick a picture from the gallery view. Now, a couple things. Take a look at what comes up. When I select this picture, look at what it does. It gives me a list of about 16 unique colors that it picked from this picture. Now, what you'll see when you look at this picture, this is a red bud. What you're going to see is that we have some pink and mauve and white colored flowers here against the sky blue background. Now, if you were actually to count the little pixels, the little dots that make up this picture, the sky blue is the most common color. But notice the colors that are shown are only from the flower. So that's another usability difference, is that we're only showing the colors that the user is interested in. We're knocking out the background color of the blue of the sky or maybe the green from leafy material. We're knocking out those other colors. Okay? So user is interested in the flowers, not in the sky blue background. Now when I first conceived this app, it was a little bit tricky to determine how to show this page. Okay? Because I thought, okay, well, I want the user to take a picture and then tap on the picture, and then we'll find plants that match that color. But the trick is, how big is your finger versus how big are the little dots that make up this picture? It's hard to say what exactly you tapped on. So from a usability standpoint, I thought, okay, you know what's even better? Is to take the picture, knock out the background, and then from the colors that remain, find the 16 most frequent colors and just show those to the user so then the user can say, okay, I'm interested in this color right here, for instance. Okay, so going back to our presentation just for a moment, where will you find data? Okay, where did we find data here? We found data in the user's phone in the image gallery. We could have found the same data by choosing Take New Photo. Okay, so we're finding data from something that's unique to the phone itself. If we go to the Plant Places website, what you'll see, I'm going to pull this up in just a moment. Okay, what you'll see is that you can also search by color here, but the trick is you have to actually choose the color from a drop-down like this. Now humans tend to have not a very good memory of shades of color. Okay, shades of color, it's something that humans just don't tend to remember very well. When I buy a new suit, if I need to match a tie, I always take the suit with me because when I go to the store, if I don't have the suit with me, I'll remember it being one shade and then I'll come back with a tie and it totally doesn't match. So as humans, we typically want to see shades of color very closely. Um, and that's why this is tricky. If I think the color of my house and I try to pick it from here, gosh, what is the color of my house? Is it this or is it this? Or, you know, so it's a bit more intuitive. Instead of looking at a picture, it's a bit more intuitive to take a picture of something, even take a live picture of something with the phone's camera, and then analyze the colors we get from that. So data, where will you find data? Can we find data on the phone? Can we find data with the accelerometer, with the GPS, the contacts list? Can we find data in any of those locations? Okay, once we found one source of data, now watch, I'm going to click on this. Okay, I'm going to click on that mauve color. What do we do with the data? In this case, what I've done is I've gone to plantplaces.com and I'm using the color that I selected to find plants with similar colors. Here is magnolia with a similar color. And it probably wouldn't surprise me if we actually find, and I don't see one here, but if we pick maybe a color like this, we should find that original red bud as well, the original red bud image that we're looking at there. Of course, I see that and watch me not find it, but nonetheless, we're finding flowers that have the same color from that picture. The picture happened to be a picture of a plant, but it really could be a picture of anything. The data we're looking at came from the plantplaces.com website. Okay, let's see if I can pull it up here. View colors PL. Okay, that's actually not the exact page I was looking for. Mobile, and it came from a feed that looks like this. It came from just a feed of data online that simply has some kind of formatted data that our Android app knows how to parse. So when we're thinking of the concept of the app, think seriously about the sources of data and how we can add value by aggregating data together from different sources. Okay? Now, what are these sources of data? For me, it just so happened that I had the onboard camera on the phone that I could use, and I also have data on plantplaces.com. But what if we don't have data from plantplaces.com? What if we want to do something else, like maybe a stock quote service? Well, there's plenty of data available on the internet. Sometimes you just need to know where to look to find it. Here's a site called Xmethods, and this shows us web services. These are services available over the internet where we can send certain things, like in this case, this is a GeoIP service. Okay, we can send in some data and get other data back. So we can submit a query, get other data back. GeoIP. This one's really interesting. What is an IP address? Okay, when we say GeoIP, what does that mean? That means it takes an IP address and resolves it to a geography. Okay, now what's an IP address? An IP address is kind of like a telephone number for our computer. Okay, it's how we can get from one website to another. For example, if I ping plantplaces.com, it's going to return to me a telephone number for plantplaces.com, 192.196.158.80. If I ping uc.edu, it'll return to me a telephone number for UC. Okay, so an IP address is kind of like a telephone number. What's interesting about these IP addresses is that in some cases we can determine some type of geography where the user is located based on these IP addresses. And we can use this information to figure out where our users are coming from. For example, we have something called Google Analytics. This is something we can put on a website to determine where our users are coming from, how long they're staying, geography, language, and location. So these are things that we can do by looking at the phone numbers or the IP addresses of people who are visiting our site. Okay, so we see for plantplaces.com, naturally the most frequent visitors come from the U.S. France is actually a very common country as well, and then the United Kingdom and some other countries that we'll see here as well. So GeoIP address, that's some very interesting data that we can analyze. But you name it, you can probably find a web service that will give you data that's of interest to you. Here's one called a stock service. So if you want to do maybe a finance app, here's a stock service where you can submit a ticker symbol and you can get back a stock quote. Okay, all kinds of good data that you can use. SMS to send a message, although actually you could generate that directly on your phone anyway. YouTube downloader, King James Bible quotes. So you name a service that you want or some kind of data that you want, weather, stock quotes, whatever it is, you can probably find a service out on the web that you can integrate with. So that's where we're really going to have a lot of value is by aggregating different pieces of data together. Okay, and again, doing it in a user-friendly format. Now, you see what happens. I clicked on a color, I clicked on a mauve color, and I said, oh, the Jane Magnolia, I kind of like that. I'm going to click on this Jane Magnolia now, and it's going to take me to a web page. And this web page is going to tell me who sells the Jane Magnolia, okay, Lowe's, Home Depot, several places that sell the Jane Magnolia. And it's going to tell me some more details about the Jane Magnolia. So again, we're taking an initial stimulus, an initial piece of data, and we're combining that with other pieces of data to add value. Okay, we'll talk more about mobile versus web in just a few minutes. Okay, so if you take a look at the path we did, we just went from home screen to search by color. From search by color, we went to results. From results, we went to this web page, this detail page. Okay, and I'll tell you another usability enhancement I did recently is notice that when you see the results, it has the image with it. Believe it or not, in the first iteration of this application, it just returned back a list of plants with matching colors. Again, here it is. Here's the original version from the original YouTube recording I did for this class. See, it just had the name of the plant, which is pretty much useless. For a better user experience, the user wants to see the photo that actually has a matching color, which is what we have here. So, in any case, we saw a few hops of screens there. We saw we went from the main menu to this page with a little image. From there, we could click on one of these colors. From clicking on the color, we get a list of plants and pictures that match that color. Then we can click on that plant and we can go to this web page. Okay? We want to think of that flow very carefully because we want to minimize clicks. We want to be very user-friendly. And that's where storyboarding comes in. I have an entire presentation later this semester that talks about storyboarding. It's a fairly long, it's about an hour-long presentation. But I'll show you the finished product. I wrote it using something called Fluid UI, which honestly I found very helpful. Let me sign in here. Okay. Sorry. At uc.edu, and then my super secure password. And what we'll see is this is kind of a rough out of the Plant Places mobile app. So these are all screens I can draw. We have the home screen, we have search by color, we have the results, and then we have the web page that shows details. Okay, we also have the GPS screen, we have the advanced search screen, and then we have a bloom date screen as well. So what I can do when I storyboard, okay, is I can take a look at each of these screens, like search by color, and I kind of have a little mock-up here that I can walk through. So here's our image data. I pick a color. It shows me a list of matching plants. I click on one and it shows me the details. So this is just a little mock-up. All of these little widgets here are UI widgets that we can put together. I strongly recommend using storyboarding because it's going to save you a lot of time and a lot of potential wasted effort. Okay? Again, I can tell you my app would have been much nicer and much quicker if I didn't waste so much time on screens that I never ended up using, and on silly UI errors. So this is where that storyboard can be very helpful. It can help you think about the flow of your application. It can help you think about what screens you need, and even more importantly, if you see here, what screens can be reused in multiple places. Okay, reuse is good. Reuse means less work we have to do. It means less testing we have to do. It also means um, that we get more bang for the buck. Okay, it means that we're able to reuse. We don't have to reinvent the screen over and over again. We promote learning because users see a screen, they see it multiple places, they know how it works, they understand that, and they're able to use that, and they don't have to learn new screens each time. So we really like reuse. Okay. Now, devices to support. This is a major consideration. What devices do you want to support? I started teaching at UC back in the 2000-2001 school year, which was back in the dot-com heyday. And at that point, everybody wanted a website. Regardless of what it was, everybody wanted a website. If you go back in the last 5 years, everybody suddenly wants a mobile app. Regardless of their needs, everybody wants a mobile app. Now we have to think of this carefully though, because when we write a mobile app, we're going to have to write it more than once to capture a large audience. Okay, we're going to need to write it more than one time to capture the audience that we want, because we're going to have the Android audience, which will be, the last time I looked was about 52% of the market in the US, about 75% of the market worldwide. Then we're going to have the iPhone market, which is about 44% in the US, about 20-some percent worldwide, but growing significantly because of China. So those numbers are in balance. Then we also have things like Windows Phone and BlackBerry and other phones like that. Okay, when we write an app, we have to write it usually for one device. And there's no easy way to just say, okay, now make this work on another device. So ask yourself seriously, when you're thinking of a mobile app, does it really need to be a mobile app? Or can it just be a web page that looks good on mobile devices? If you have a web page that looks good on mobile devices, you only have to write it once. If you have a mobile app, you have to write it and support it for each of the platforms that you want to write it on. Now, the trick for me is, why did I choose to do mine as an Android app? A few reasons. One is I have an Android phone myself. Okay, and everybody who's an administrator who's using plantplaces.com also has an Android phone. Okay, another reason is, well, to do iPhone development, you have to have a Macintosh. I own a lot of computers, and it just so happens that none of them are Apple computers. So if I wanted to write an app for iPhone, I would need to get an Apple, which I don't have. Well, okay. Then I thought, well, I really want to do a good job one time before I do the same job twice. I want to get it perfected on one platform once before I work on a different platform. In other words, do a good job one time instead of a mediocre job twice. Focus on that. Okay. Well, every time I go to show this off, I end up going to an audience which are a lot of plant people, and plant people oftentimes tend to have iPhones. And so the question that I always get is, do you have this for iPhone? When will it be ready for iPhone? Can you make it for iPhone? These are things that we need to consider. So, that being said, what is a good mobile app then? Well, a good mobile app is something that uses something inherent to the mobile phone. Notice that the app that I showed you is using either the gallery of images on the phone or the camera. Also, in some features we didn't look at, it's also using the GPS. So these are things that are not available over a browser. The gallery, the GPS, the camera. Okay, if you can use those, then you have a mobile app. Now, once you no longer need those, ask yourself, does it still need to be a mobile app? So here we've used the mobile app to get an image, decompose that image and figure out the frequency of colors, give us a set of results of plants that match that color. And then if you noticed, when I clicked on one of those plants, I went over into a web view. Okay, I went into a web view. The reason why I went to a web view is that web view is device independent. It doesn't matter if I'm on Android or if I'm on iOS. Once I go into a web view, it's just like we see here, once I go to a web view, it's device independent. I don't have to rewrite it for every different device. So this is actually a little portal or a little portlet that's showing us a web page through the phone. So this data that we're looking at here doesn't have anything that is specific to the Android phone. I could very easily reuse this in other locations. So think about that. Can you do some kind of hybrid app? Can you use the accelerometer, the GPS, the camera, the text messaging, and then turn the user into a web user? The other bonus of that is that if you do that, any advertisements that the user clicks on within this web page here are considered web ads, and those web ads generally pay more, pay better than mobile ads are going to pay. Okay, integrated development environment, we'll look at that in a separate video. We're coming up roughly on the half-hour mark here, so I don't want to take this video too much longer, but we'll look at the IDE. That's what we use to write our app. Next, deployment. How do we deploy our app? This is something that the app stores make easy for us. This is the Plant Places mobile app page on the Google Play Store. What's interesting is if you look behind the scenes, you can see a lot of other interesting things. So when I log on, this is what I see as a developer. It gives me a lot of really good information about my app and where it is deployed. Okay, so statistics, I always have a lot of fun looking at this. Okay, current installations by device. That number's growing, which naturally is good. Installations by Android version. So if I can stick with anything that's Android 4 or greater, that opens up a lot of opportunities to me because there are a lot of new things available on Android 4 and greater. Like the Google Maps version 2 is on Android 4 and greater. There's things called fragments, the action bar, the search bar. This opens up a lot of things to me as long as the critical mass of my audience is on Android 4 or greater. Now, if we take a look at this, Android 4 now makes up, if you add them all together, I'll just do some quick math here. Android 4 makes up about 85% of my audience now, maybe even more than that. Yeah, about 85%. That's significant. If you watch the same video from a year ago, it made up about 70%, maybe even a little bit less, maybe even 65. And I didn't want to abandon the users who were still on Android 2. But now the critical mass is in that Android 4 and greater. Okay, so now that tells me there's a lot more I can do with my app. Okay, so we also have the version of my app. It's currently version 7. It will give me a list of how many users are on that version. Okay, if I go back to statistics, if I go to my app version, it shows me how many people are on version 7. 91%, a significant amount of people on version 7. I'm going to release a new version shortly, and that'll have a lot of usability improvements in it. So it's very interesting to watch when I release a new version, how many people update and take the new version. Usually about 50% of users will get the new version within about a day or two, but I can't force them to take the new version. You see, the very first version I made was version 2, and that was in February of 2013. There's still a couple users on that. There's still a few users on version 5. I can't force them to take an update. So when we think about deploying our app, we have to think very seriously about what do we do when someone doesn't take an update. And we have to also acknowledge we don't have control over that. Somebody might not take an update, and at that point we've lost control. So we don't want to introduce anything that would be a bug or that would be a major security flaw, because there's nothing we can do to force the user to take an upgrade. Okay, so pricing and distribution, store listing. One of the other things I wanted to look at under statistics, country. This is really interesting. So, United States and Canada, two highly ranking countries. Italy also pretty high. Iceland, a couple users there. I'm a bit surprised about United Kingdom being a bit low because I've done a lot of work in GPSing a lot of plants there, and surprisingly only one user in United Kingdom. But this is always kind of fun to watch. Where are your users and what do they speak? What language do they speak? So we want to think very seriously about how we can apply our app to multiple languages, okay? Uh, because we might find we have less competition in countries outside of the United States. Might be a lot of windows there that we can explore. So, what are we solving? Where will we find the data? Storyboard it. What devices will we support? What's our deployment strategy? And once it's rolled out, how do we support our user base? Okay, how do we issue updates to them? How do we communicate with them? These are things that we want to consider very seriously when developing our app. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this video here. In our next video, we're going to look more specifically at integrated development environments and also programming languages and a few more specific differences between iOS and Android. Thank you.